English articles. The articles in English are the definite article the and the indefinite articles n. They are the two most common determiners. The definite article is the default determiner when the speaker believes that the listener knows the identity of a common noun's referent, because it is obvious, because it is common knowledge, or because it was mentioned in the same sentence or an earlier sentence. The indefinite article is the default determiner for other singular, countable, common nouns, while no determiner is the default for other common nouns. Other determiners are used to add semantic information such as amount, many, a few, proximity, this, those, or possession, my, the government's. Usage. English grammar requires that, in most cases, a singular, countable noun phrase start with a determiner. One, for example, I have a box is grammatically correct, but I have box a is not. The most common determiners are the articles the and a, n, which specify the presence or absence of definiteness of the noun. Other possible determiners include words like this, my, each, and many. There are also cases where no determiner is required, as in the sentence John likes fast cars, where neither John nor fast cars includes a determiner. The definite article is the default when the referent of the noun phrase headed by a common noun is assumed to be unique or known from the context. For example, in the sentence the boy with glasses was looking at the moon, it is assumed that in the context the reference can only be to one boy and one moon. However, the definite article is not typically used. With generic nouns, plural or uncountable, cars have accelerators, happiness is contagious, referring to cars in general and happiness in general, compare the happiness I felt yesterday, specifying particular happiness. With proper names, John, France, London, etc. The indefinite article at before a consonant sound or before a vowel sound is used only with singular, countable nouns. It indicates that the referent of the noun phrase is one unspecified member of a class. For example, the sentence an ugly man was smoking a pipe does not specify the identity of the ugly man or pipe. When referring to a particular date, the definite article the is typically used. 2. He was born on the 10th of May. When referring to a day of the week, the indefinite article, a, or definite article, the, may be used, following the same guidelines of generality versus specificity. He was born on a Thursday. He was born on the Monday before Thanksgiving. No article is used with plural or uncountable nouns when the referent is indefinite, just as in the generic definite case described above. However, in such situations, the determiner some is often added, or any in negative contexts and in many questions. For example, there are apples in the kitchen or there are some apples in the kitchen, we do not have information or we do not have any information. Would you like tea? Or would you like some tea? And would you like any tea? Or would you like some good tea? Additionally, articles are not normally used in noun phrases that contain other determiners, my house, this cat, America's history, although one can combine articles with certain other determiners, as in the many issues, such a child, see English determiners section combinations of determiners. With pronouns he, nobody, although again certain combinations are possible, as the one, the many, the few. Preceding noun phrases consisting of a clause or infinitive phrase, what you have done is very good, to surrender is to die. If it is required to be concise, e.g. in headlines, signs, labels, and notes, articles are often omitted along with certain other function words. For example, rather than the mayor was attacked, a newspaper headline might say just mayor attacked. For more information on article usage, see the sections definite article and indefinite article below. For more cases where no article is used, see zero article in English. Word order. In most cases, the article is the first word of its noun phrase, preceding all other adjectives and modifiers. 3. The little old red bag held a very big surprise. There are a few things that are the same, and certain determiners, such as all, both, half, double, precede the definite article when used in combination, all the team, both the girls, half the time, double the amount. Exclamative markers of nominals, though still also determinative, precede the indefinite article, such, he is such an idiot. And what a day. Adjectives qualified by to, so, as in how generally precede the indefinite article, too great a loss, so hard a problem, as delicious an apple as I have ever tasted, I know how pretty a girl she is. When adjectives are qualified by quite, particularly when it means, fairly, the word quite but not the adjective itself often precedes the indefinite article, quite a long letter. See also English determiners section combinations of determiners and adjectives. Definite article. The only definite article in English is the word the, denoting persons or things already mentioned, under discussion, implied, or otherwise presumed familiar to the listener or reader. The is the most commonly used word in the English language, accounting for 7% of all words used. 4. The can be used with both singular and plural nouns, with nouns of any gender, and with nouns that start with any letter. This is different from many other languages which have different articles for different genders and or numbers. Abbreviations for the and that. Bardthorn after Eilfrich. Since that is one of the most frequently used words in English, at various times short abbreviations for it have been found. Bardthorn, the earliest abbreviation, it is used in manuscripts in the Old English language. It is a letter, with a bold horizontal stroke through the ascender, and it represents the word at, meaning the, or, that, neuter noun. ACC. And, with a superscript E or T appear in Middle English manuscripts for, e, and, at, respectively. Y and Y are developed from and appear in early modern manuscripts and in print CE form below. Occasional proposals have been made by individuals for an abbreviation. In 1916, Legros and Grant included in their classic printer's handbook typographical printing surfaces, a proposal for a letter similar to H to represent, TH, thus abbreviating the, to E. 5. E form. By the grace that God put. Extract from the book of Marjorie Kemp. In Middle English, the E was frequently abbreviated as with a small e above it, similar to the abbreviation for that, which was with a small t above it. During the latter Middle English and early modern English periods, the letter thorn, in its common script, or cursive, form came to resemble a Y shape. With the arrival of movable type printing, the substitution of Y for became ubiquitous, leading to the common E, as in ye old curiosity shop. One major reason for this was that Y existed in the printer's types that William Caxton and his contemporaries imported from Belgium and the Netherlands, while it did not. 6. As a result, the use of AY with an E above it as an abbreviation became common. It can still be seen in reprints of the 1611 edition of the King James Version of the Bible in places such as Romans 15:29 or in the Mayflower Compact. Historically, the article was never pronounced with AY sound even when it was so written. Indefinite article. The indefinite article of English takes the two forms, an and. Semantically, they can be regarded as meaning one, usually without emphasis. They can be used only with singular countable nouns. For the possible use of some or any is an equivalent with plural and uncountable nouns. See use of some below. Etymology. An is the older form related to one, which it also predates, cognate to Latin, German ein, Gothic eins, Old Norse ein, etc. 7th, the Old English word and was derived from Proto-West Germanic ein. 8th, which was derived from Proto-Germanic *eines. All of these words descended from Proto-Indo-European *oinos, meaning single. 9. Distinction between an and. The n of the original Old English indefinite article and got gradually assimilated before consonants in almost all dialects by the 15th century. Before vowels, the n survived into modern English. Currently, the form n is used before words starting with a vowel sound, regardless of whether the word begins with a vowel letter. 10. Where the next word begins with a consonant sound, a is used. Examples: a box, an apple, an SSO pronounced, SSO, an MP3 pronounced, MP3, a HEPA filter here, HEPA is an acronym, a series of letters pronounced as a word rather than as individual letters, an hour, the H is silent, a one-armed bandit pronounced, an $80 feet red, an $80 fee, an urban American English where the H is silent but a urban British English, a unionized worker but an unionized particle. Before words beginning with Jew and was formerly widespread, e.g. in unicorn, and eulogy, but has largely been superseded by since the 19th century. In older loanwords of Latin or Greek provenance, initial H used to be silent in general, thus the use of an before such words was common and has survived to some extent to recent times even when the H has been restored in pronunciation. Some speakers and writers use an before a word beginning with the sound H in an unstressed syllable, an historical novel, and hotel. 11. However, this usage is now less common. Some dialects, particularly in England, such as Cockney, silence many or all initial H sounds, H dropping, and so employ it in situations where it would not be used in the standard language, like in helmet, standard English, a helmet. There used to be a distinction analogous to that between n and for the possessive determiners my and thy, which became mine and thine before a vowel, as in mine eyes. 12. In other languages. Other more or less analogous cases in different languages include the Yiddish articles, and, used in essentially the same manner as the English ones. The Hungarian articles and as, used the same way, except that they are definite articles. Juncture loss, as described below, has occurred in that language too, and the privative and prefixes, meaning, not, or, without, in Greek and Sanskrit. Pronunciation. Both n and are usually pronounced with a schwa, n. However, when stressed, which is rare in ordinary speech, they are normally pronounced respectively as e to rhyme with day and ain to rhyme with pan. See weak and strong forms in English. Juncture loss. In a process called juncture loss, the n has wandered back and forth between the indefinite article and words beginning with vowels over the history of the language, where for example what was once an uncle is now an uncle. One example is the text, smote hym on the head with an edge tool, from 1448 in the past in letters, meaning, smote him on the head with an edge tool. 13. Other examples include an ox for an ox and an apple for an apple. Sometimes the change has been permanent. For example, a newt was once a newt, a nickname was once an econyme, where eke means, extra, as in eke out meaning, and in the other direction, and napprant meaning a little tablecloth, related to the word napkin became an apron, and a natter became an adder. The initial n in orange was also dropped through juncture loss. 14. But this happened before the word was borrowed into English. 15. Use of some. The existential determinative or determiner some is sometimes used as a functional equivalent of a, n, with plural and uncountable nouns also called a partitive. For example, give me some apples, give me some water, equivalent to the singular countable forms an apple and a glass of water. Grammatically this sum is not required. It is also possible to use zero article, give me apples, give me water. The use of some in such cases implies some limited quantity. Compare the forms unos, unas in Spanish, which are the plural of the indefinite article and una. Like the articles, some belongs to the class of central determiners, which are mutually exclusive, so the some boys is ungrammatical. 16. The contrasting use of any in negative clauses proves that some is polarity sensitive, and occurs in positive clauses. I have some objections to make, versus I don't have any objections to make, I have any objections to make, and I don't have some objections to make, are ungrammatical. 17. Some can also have a more emphatic meaning, some but not others, or some but not many. For example, some people like football, while others prefer rugby, or I've got some money, but not enough to lend you any. It can also be used as an indefinite pronoun, not qualifying a noun at all, give me some. Or followed by a prepositional phrase, I want some of your vodka, the same applies to any. Some can also be used with singular countable nouns, as in there is some person on the porch, which implies that the identity of the person is unknown to the speaker, which is not necessarily the case when a n is used. This usage is fairly informal, although singular countable some can also be found in formal contexts. We seek some value of x such that when some is used just as an indefinite article, it is normally pronounced weakly, as sm. In other meanings, it is pronounced sm. Effect on alphabetical order. In sorting titles and phrases alphabetically, articles are usually excluded from consideration, since being so common makes them more of a hindrance than a help in finding the desired item. For example, the Comedy of Errors is alphabetized before A Midsummer Night's Dream, because the n are ignored and comedy alphabetizes before midsummer. In an index, the former work might be written, Comedy of Errors, with the article moved to the end. In West Country English. Speakers of West Country English may use articles in certain environments where speakers of Standard English would not. Non-standard uses occur for example with diseases, the chicken pox, the arthritis quantifying expressions, the both, the most holidays, the Christmas geographical units and institutions, the church, the county Devon, etc. The indefinite article, on the other hand, often occurs as also before vowels. 18. See also. False title. Notes. Adjectives. English adjectives form a large open category of words in English which, semantically, tend to denote properties such as size, color, mood, quality, age, etc. With such members as other, big, new, good, different, Cuban, sure, important, and right. 1. 2. Adjectives head adjective phrases, and the most typical members function as modifiers in noun phrases. 3. Most adjectives either inflect for grade, e.g., big, bigger, biggest, or combine with more and most to form comparatives, e.g., more interesting, and superlatives, e.g., most interesting. 4. They are characteristically modifiable by very, e.g., very small. A large number of the most typical members combine with the suffix ly to form adverbs, e.g., final plus ly, finally. Most adjectives function as complements in verb phrases, e.g., it looks good, and some license complements of their own, e.g., happy that you're here. 5. The syntax of adjectives and adjective phrases. Internal structure. An adjective phrase, ADJP, is headed by an adjective and optionally takes dependents. Adjectives can take modifiers, which are usually pre-head adverb phrases, e.g., truly wonderful, or post-head preposition phrases, e.g., too big for you, afraid of the dark. The following tree diagram in the style of the Cambridge Grammar of the English language shows the ADJP very happy to try, with the adverb very as a modifier and the clause to try as a complement. Complements of adjectives. English adjectives can take clauses, preposition phrases, and noun phrases as complements. Clause complements and adjective phrases can be either finite or non-finite. Finite clause complements can be declarative, e.g., very pleased that I had bought his book, or interrogative, e.g., not sure whether I want to keep reading. Non-finite clause complements can occur with a subject, e.g., happy for you to prove me wrong, or without a subject, e.g., eager to please. Adjectives that take preposition phrase complements license preposition phrases headed by fixed prepositions. For example, dependent takes preposition phrase complements headed only by on or upon. In some cases, a complement is obligatory. I'm loath to admit it is fine, but I'm loath is incomplete. A small number of adjectives do, like, near, unlike, and worth can take noun phrases as complements. 6. For example, worth can function as the head of an adjective phrase with a noun phrase complement, e.g., worth a second chance. Modifiers of adjectives. The prototypical pre-head modifiers of English adjectives are adverb phrases headed by degree adverbs, such as very and to. 7. 8. For example, the adjective tall can be modified by the adverb phrase very. Less common pre-head modifiers in adjective phrases are noun phrases, e.g., 6 feet long, preposition phrases, e.g., by no means realistic, and determiner phrases, e.g., that small. 8. Preposition phrases function as post-head modifiers in English adjective phrases. In the adjective phrase foolish in the extreme, for example, the preposition phrase in the extreme functions as a modifier. Less commonly, certain adverbs, indeed and still, and one determiner, enough, can head phrases that function as post-head modifiers in adjective phrases, e.g., very harmful indeed, sweeter still, and fair enough. 8. Functions. While adjectives themselves function only as heads in adjective phrases, and ADJP is often a head adjective with no dependents, adjective phrases function at the clause level as predicative complements and predicative adjuncts. At the phrase level, adjective phrases function as modifiers and predeterminatives in noun phrases and complements in some preposition phrases, e.g., they didn't look as good. 9. Predicative complements. At the clause level, adjective phrases commonly appear as predicative complements. 10. A predicative complement is a constituent that ascribes a property to a predicand. For example, the dinner was lovely ascribes the property of being lovely to the dinner, the syntactic subject and semantic predicand. Predicative complements may be subject-related, as in the previous example, or object-related, the latter being licensed by complex transitive verbs such as feel and make, as in that made her hungry, where the property of being hungry is ascribed to the syntactic object and semantic predicand, her. 10. Predicative adjuncts. Adjective phrases also function as predicative adjuncts in clause structure. Such adjective phrases can be integrated into the clause, e.g., love dies young, or detached from the clause as a supplement, e.g., happy to see her, I wept. Adjective phrases functioning as predicative adjuncts are typically interpreted with the subject of the main clause being the predicand of the adjunct, i.e., I was happy to see her. 11. When this is not the case, such supplements are often deprecated as dangling modifiers. Modifiers within noun phrases. Adjective phrases often function as pre-head or attributive modifiers in noun phrases, occurring after any determinative in the noun phrase, NP, e.g., some nice folks. In some cases they are post-head or post-positive modifiers, with particular adjectives like galore, e.g., stories galore, or with certain compound heads like somebody, e.g., somebody special. 12. Predeterminatives within noun phrases. Adjective phrases can function as predeterminatives under certain conditions. Specifically, they can do so only in noun phrases with a or and functioning as a determinative and only if the adjective phrase either has such or exclamative what as its header begins with one of a small number of modifiers, i.e., as, how, so, this, that, or to. 12. In the noun phrase such a difficult little devil, for example, the adjective phrase such functions as predeterminative. Similarly, in the clause how important a part is it, the adjective phrase how important functions as predeterminative. Complements within preposition phrases. Adjective phrases can function as complements of preposition phrases. 13. In the clause the film characterized him as childish, for example, the adjective phrase childish functions as the complement of the preposition as. Cases such as the poor in the French. In cases such as the very poor in the French which denote a class, traditional grammar see the adjective as being used as a noun. 14. However, poor cannot actually be a noun here for 3 reasons. Very doesn't modify nouns, there is no possibility to pluralize poor, e.g., 3 poors, and most determinatives are impossible, e.g., a poor could not or some poor did. Other grammars see this as a case of ellipsis, where the head noun is simply left out and the ADJP is a regular modifier. 15. In this view, the elided noun is something like one, and the very poor is an elided form of the very poor ones. Other accounts, such as one advanced by Baarts, do not assume ellipsis but instead argue that phrases like these are best analyzed as noun phrases with an empty element functioning as a head, yielding an analysis like this, NP the AP varied v poor edge. Empty set n. 16. The Cambridge Grammar of the English language takes such instances to be fused modifier heads. Under this analysis, adjective phrases may bear 2 functions at one time, fusing the functions of modifier and head in an NP where no head noun exists. In the noun phrase the very poor, the adjective poor is the fused modifier head as shown in the tree diagram below. 17. Types of adjectives. Non-attributive and non-predicative adjectives. While most adjectives can function as both attributive modifier, e.g., a new job, and predicative complement, e.g., the job was new, some are limited to one or the other of these 2 functions. 18. For example, the adjective drunken cannot be used predicatively, a drunken fool versus the fool was drunken. 19. While the adjective awake has the opposite limitation, asterisk an awake child versus the child is awake. It is not only certain adjectives, but also certain constructions that are limited to one function or the other. For instance, a nice hot bath is possible, as if the bath is hot and the bath is nice, but the bath is nice hot is not. 20. Linguist and historian Peter Matthews observes that the attributive and predicative uses of adjectives have diverged and continue to do so. 21. For example, the sense of big and well, that's big of you from the early 20th century is only possible as a predicative complement. Gradable and non-gradable adjectives. Most adjectives are gradable, for but some are not, e.g., ancillary, bovine, municipal, pubic, first, etc., or at least have particular senses in which they are not. 22. For example, a very Canadian embassy can imply that the embassy has a stereotypically Canadian characteristics, politeness perhaps, but it cannot mean that the embassy represents Canada in the way that a Canadian embassy does. Other types claimed in traditional grammars. Many words that have been categorized by traditional grammars as types of adjectives are categorized as belonging to entirely different lexical categories by modern grammars, such as the Cambridge Grammar of the English language. The types below are mostly of this kind. What these words have in common is, to put it in traditional terms, that they qualify nouns. 18. In modern terms, they appear as pre-head dependents in noun phrases. Note that a word may be traditionally assigned to multiple types. For example, whose is variously called a possessive adjective, an interrogative adjective, a pronominal adjective, and a relative adjective. Quantitative adjectives. Words like many and few, along with numbers e.g., many good people, 2 times are traditionally categorized as adjectives, where modern grammars see them as determiners. 18. This term has also been used for ordinals like first, tenth, and hundredth, which are undisputed adjectives. Demonstrative adjectives. This type includes this, that, these, and those, 18, which are seen by most modern grammars as determiners. It also includes the undisputed adjective such. Possessive adjectives. This type includes my, your, our, their, etc. E.g., my friend. 18. These are categorized by most modern grammars as pronouns or determiners. Interrogative adjectives. This type includes what, which and whose, e.g., what time. 18. These are categorized by most modern grammars as pronouns or determiners. What in exclamatives, e.g., what a lovely day, is an adjective, but is not interrogative. 23. How in questions like how are you, is sometimes categorized as an interrogative adjective. 24. Distributive adjectives. This type includes words like any, each, and neither, e.g., anytime. 18. These are categorized by most modern grammars as determiners. Indefinite adjectives. This type includes words like all, another, any, both, and each, e.g., another day. 18. These are categorized by most modern grammars as determiners. Pronominal adjectives. This type includes words that qualify a noun and must agree with it in number, all, these, some, no, etc., e.g., these days. 18. These are categorized by other grammars as determiners or pronouns. Proper adjectives. This includes words that are derived or thought to be derived from common nouns and are capitalized, e.g., an Italian vacation, a New York minute. 18. Some of these are categorized by modern grammars as adjectives, e.g., Italian, Christian, Dubliner, Chinese, Thatcherite, etc. And some as nouns, e.g., the Reagan administration, the Tokyo train system. Compound adjectives. This type includes adjectives, or what were or thought to be adjectives, composed of 2 or more words operating as a single adjective, e.g., straight-laced, New York, see above, long-term, etc. 18. Relative adjectives. This type includes which and whose, e.g., the person whose book I bought, appearing in relative constructions. 18. These are categorized by most modern grammars as pronouns or determiners. Morphology. Inflectional morphology. Many adjectives inflect for degree of comparison. For example, hot has the comparative form hotter and the superlative form hottest. Typically, short adjectives including most single-syllable adjectives that are semantically gradable, adjectives originating in Old English, and short adjectives borrowed from French use the er and s suffixes. Adjectives with 2 syllables vary in whether they can mark degree of comparison through inflectional suffixes or must do so paraphrastically with more and most. Some take either form, e.g., commoner, more common, while others take only one or the other, e.g., happier but usually not more happy. Longer adjectives derive from Greek or Latin, and most adjectives of 3 or more syllables typically mark degree of comparison with more and most, e.g., more expensive but not expensiver. 25. Derivational morphology. Category maintaining. It is possible to form adjectives from other adjectives through the addition of prefixes, e.g., happy right pointing arrow unhappy, typical right pointing arrow atypical, and suffixes, e.g., young right pointing arrow youngish, botanic right pointing arrow botanical. Category changing. Adjective forming. Adjectives may be formed by the addition of affixes to a base from another category of words. For example, the noun recreation combines with the suffix al to form the adjective recreational. Prefixes of this type include a plus noun, blaze right pointing arrow ablaze, and non plus noun, stop right pointing arrow non-stop. Suffixes of this type include verb plus able, except right pointing arrow acceptable, noun plus al, nation right pointing arrow national, noun plus esque, picture right pointing arrow picturesque, noun or verb plus less, home right pointing arrow homeless, tire right pointing arrow tireless, noun plus 8, passion right pointing arrow passionate, noun plus n, gold right pointing arrow golden, verb plus ive, act right pointing arrow active, and many others. 26. With an adjective as the lexical base. Through a process of derivational morphology, adjectives may form words of other categories. For example, the adjective happy combines with the suffix ness to form the noun happiness. It is typical of English adjectives to combine with the ly suffix to become adverbs, e.g., real right pointing arrow really, encouraging right pointing arrow encouragingly. B. Noun forming suffixes include site, private right pointing arrow privacy, ness, happy right pointing arrow happiness, dom, wise right pointing arrow wisdom, hood, likely right pointing arrow likelihood, east, special right pointing arrow specialist, and th, true right pointing arrow truth. 27. Verb forming affixes include ify and is, e.g., real right pointing arrow realize, just right pointing arrow justify. Adjectives also form words through conversion, without any change in form, e.g., red, edge, right pointing arrow red, noun. Compounding. An adjective base can join with a base from another category to form a new word as in blackboard, noteworthy, childproof, fail-safe, uptight, etc. Adjectives versus other lexical categories. Adjectives versus nouns. Typically, adjectives and nouns in English can be distinguished by their morphological and syntactic features. Prototypical adjectives can inflect for degree of comparison, e.g., happy and happier, but cannot inflect for number, e.g., happy but not happies. Conversely, prototypical nouns can inflect for number, e.g., mother and mothers, but not for degree of comparison, e.g., mother but not mother or motherist. English adjectives head phrases that typically function as pre-head modifiers of nouns or predicative complements, e.g., those nice folks seem quite capable, while English nouns head phrases that can function as subjects, or objects in verb phrases or preposition phrases, e.g., Jess told my sister a story about cute animals. Noun phrases also function, like adjective phrases, as predicative complements, though in a more limited range of contexts. For example, both be and feel allow the adjective phrase difficult as a predicative complement, but only be also allows the noun phrase a difficulty. The prototypical prehead modifiers of adjectives are adverb phrases, e.g., quite capable, while the prototypical prehead modifiers of nouns are adjective phrases, e.g., those nice folks. Finally, English adjectives, unlike English nouns, cannot function as the heads of phrases containing determinatives or predeterminatives. 28. The following table summarizes these characteristics. Adjectives, nouns. Inflection comparative or superlative est plural s. Typical function of the related phrases. Prehead modifier of noun, predicative complement. Subject, object, predicative complement. Typical prehead modifier adverb phrase adjective phrase. Occurrence with determinatives. Do not head phrases containing determinatives. Head phrases containing determinatives. The distinction between adjective and noun in English is not as clear in certain cases, such as with color terms and noun-like words occurring in attributive position. In the case of color terms, the category can often be identified without controversy. For instance, color terms used as subjects, e.g., orange is the color of my love, or predicative complements, e.g., my favorite color is orange, are typical nouns, while color terms occurring attributively, e.g., the orange flower, are typical adjectives. 16. Similarly, color terms marked as plural, e.g., the reds in the painting, are nouns, while those marked as comparative, e.g., redder, are superlative, e.g., reddest, are adjectives. However, the categorization of color terms is less clear in cases like the foliage emerged, becoming deep green as the summer unfolds. Here, the modifier of the color term is an adjective deep rather than an adverb deeply, which suggests that green is a noun. But the phrase occurs as the predicative complement of becoming could, in principle, be modified by an adverb like very or appear in comparative form, which are typical characteristics of adjectives. 29. Paharts notes that this apparent dual categorization can be avoided by treating terms like deep orange as adjective compounds. 16. Almost any noun may appear in attributive position, e.g., a geography student, but in doing so they have traditionally said to be functioning as an adjective. Such words are like adjectives in that they function as prehead modifiers of nouns and resist pluralization in this position, *a geography student. However, they are more like nouns in that they can be modified by adjective phrases, not adverb phrases, e.g., a cultural geography student, not a culturally geography student, or not gradable, and cannot occur alone as predicative complements, ** a student seems geography. Despite sharing features of both adjectives and nouns, modern dictionaries and grammars typically assign these words to the category of noun, though some describe them as a subset of noun called adjectival nouns. 16. Adjectives versus verbs. Many adjectives derive from present participles, e.g., interesting, willing, and amazing, or past participles, e.g., tired, involved, and concerned. These can often be distinguished from verbs by their ability to be modified by very, e.g., very tired but not very based on it, or appear after become as predicative complements. Adjectives almost never take objects, so a case like they were entertaining guests must be a verb. 30. Adjectives versus prepositions. Most prepositions are not gradable, so this can often distinguish them from adjectives, which typically are. As a result, adjectives can typically be modified by adverbs very, so, and to, while prepositions typically cannot. Conversely, prepositions can typically be modified by right, e.g., right up the tree, while adjectives cannot. Finally, preposition phrases readily function as non-predicative adjuncts in clause structure, e.g., after dinner, there was dancing, while adjectives are typically ungrammatical without a predicant, e.g., enjoyable, there was dancing. Semantics. Apart from the general semantic properties of adjectives denoting properties such as size, color, mood, quality, age, etc., English adjectives have various semantic properties that are not as general. Quantification and number. An adjective can express quantification over the events described by the verb. For example, the adjective occasional in she also has an occasional drink, i.e., she drinks occasionally, quantifies over her drinking rather than describing the drink. Although English adjectives do not participate in the system of number the way determiners, nouns, and pronouns do, English adjectives may still express number semantically. For example, adjectives like several, various, and multiple are semantically plural, while those like single, lone, and unitary have singular semantics. 31. Definiteness and specificity. In English, the definiteness of a noun phrase is usually marked on the determiner, 32, not on adjectives. But certain adjectives, in particular superlatives, are mostly incompatible with an indefinite interpretation of the NP. 33. Cases like they were best students seem ungrammatical, though exceptions such as they were best friends exist. In cases such as a best case scenario, best case is a nominal, not a full NP. Non-superlatives can also work in this way. The adjectives wrong and right are often incompatible with an indefinite NP, e.g., they found a right person, here suitable would be better, but are possible in other cases, e.g., there isn't a right answer. Unlike some languages, English does not mark the specificity of NPs grammatically. But NPs with adjective modifiers such as specific or certain are generally interpreted specifically, while those with adjective modifiers such as arbitrary are generally interpreted non-specifically. 34. Grammar semantics. Pre-head versus post-head modification. A noun phrase with an adjective phrase functioning as a pre-head modifier may have a different interpretation from one with the same modifier appearing after the head noun. 35. For example, the visible stars can mean either those stars that are visible at a particular time or those that are generally visible. In contrast, the stars visible does not have the generally visible interpretation. Compounds versus modifiers. The semantic contribution of adjectives as modifiers in a noun phrase is typically quite different from the semantic contribution of the same adjective as a base in a compound word. 36. A greenhouse, for instance, is a house that is green in color, but a greenhouse is neither green in color nor a house. Similarly, a big mouth is not a mouth that is big, nor is a highway that is high or software that is soft. The phonology of these pairs also differs. With the adjective as a modifier in a noun phrase, the adjective and the noun typically receive equal stress, a blackbird, but in a compound, the adjective typically takes primary word stress, a blackbird. Only a small set of English adjectives function in this way. 37. The color words black, blue, brown, green, gray, red, and white grand in words of family relationships. A set of monosyllabic gradable adjectives such as broad, dry, free, hard, hot, mad, small, sweet, etc. A small set of non-gradable monosyllabic adjectives, blind, dumb, first, quick equals alive, square, whole. A very small number of disyllabic adjectives, bitter, narrow and possibly silly. Notes. A. This article uses asterisks to indicate ungrammatical examples. Adjective. An adjective, abbreviated adj, is a word that describes or defines a noun or noun phrase. Its semantic role is to change information given by the noun. Traditionally, adjectives are considered one of the main parts of speech of the English language, although historically they were classed together with nouns. Nowadays, certain words that usually had been classified as adjectives, including the, this, my, etc., typically are classed separately, as determiners. Examples. That's a funny idea. Attributive. That idea is funny. Predicative. Tell me something funny. Postpositive. The good, the bad, and the funny. Substantive. Clara Oswald died 3 times. Quantitative. Etymology. Adjective comes from Latin nomen adjectivum, to, a calque of ancient Greek, epithetonoma, surname romanized, epithetonoma, lit. Additional noun, whence also English epithet. 3-4 in the grammatical tradition of Latin and Greek, because adjectives were inflected for gender, number, and case-like nouns, a process called declension, they were considered a type of noun. The words that are today typically called nouns were then called substantive nouns, nomen substantivum. 5. The terms noun substantive and noun adjective were formerly used in English but are now obsolete. 1. Types of use. Depending on the language, an adjective can precede a corresponding noun on a prepositive basis or it can follow a corresponding noun on a postpositive basis. Structural, contextual, and style considerations can impinge on the pre- or postposition of an adjective in a given instance of its occurrence. In English, occurrences of adjectives generally can be classified into one of 3 categories. Prepositive adjectives, which are also known as attributive adjectives, occur on an antecedent basis within noun phrases. 6. For example, I put my happy kids into the car, wherein happy occurs on an antecedent basis within the my happy kids noun phrase, and therefore functions in a prepositive adjective. Postpositive adjectives can occur immediately subsequent to a noun within a noun phrase, e.g. The only room available costs twice what we expected, is linked via copula or other linking mechanism subsequent to a corresponding noun or pronoun. For example, my kids are happy, wherein happy is a predicate adjective. 6. See also, predicative expression, subject complement, or as in a positive adjective within a noun phrase, e.g. My kids, who are happy to go for a drive, are in the back seat. Nominalized adjectives, which function as nouns. One way this happens is by lighting a noun from an adjective noun phrase, whose remnant thus is a nominalization. In the sentence, I read 2 books to them, he preferred the sad book, but she preferred the happy. Happy is a nominalized adjective, short for happy one, or happy book. Another way this happens is in phrases like, out with the old, in with the new, where the old means that which is old, or all that is old, and similarly with the new. In such cases, the adjective may function as a mass noun, as in the preceding example. In English, it may also function as a plural count noun denoting a collective group, as in, the meek shall inherit the earth, where the meek means those who are meek, or all who are meek. Distribution. Adjectives feature as a part of speech word class in most languages. In some languages, the words that serve a semantic function of adjectives are categorized together with some other class, such as nouns or verbs. In the phrase, a Ford car, Ford is unquestionably a noun but its function is adjectival, to modify, car. In some languages adjectives can function as nouns. For example, the Spanish phrase, un rojo, means, a red one. As for confusion, with verbs, rather than an adjective meaning big, a language might have a verb that means to be big, and could then use an attributive verb construction analogous to big being house, to express what in English is called a big house. Such an analysis is possible for the grammar of Standard Chinese and Korean, for example. Different languages do not use adjectives in exactly the same situations. For example, where English uses to be hungry, hungry being an adjective, Dutch, French, and Spanish use hunger haben, avoir faim, and tener hambre, respectively, literally, to have hunger, the words for hunger being nouns. Similarly, where Hebrew uses the adjective zakuk, roughly, in need of, or needing, English uses the verb to need. In languages that have adjectives as a word class, it is usually an open class, that is, it is relatively common for new adjectives to be formed via such processes as derivation. However, Bantu languages are well known for having only a small closed class of adjectives, and new adjectives are not easily derived. Similarly, native Japanese adjectives, adjectives are considered a closed class, as are native verbs although nouns, an open class may be used in the genitive to convey some adjectival meanings, and there is also the separate open class of adjectival nouns, not adjectives. Adverbs. Many languages, including English, distinguish between adjectives, which qualify nouns and pronouns, and adverbs, which mainly modify verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. Not all languages make this exact distinction. Many, including English, have words that can function as either. For example, in English, fast is an adjective in a fast car, where it qualifies the noun car, but an adverb in he drove fast, where it modifies the verb drove. In Dutch and German, adjectives and adverbs are usually identical in form and many grammarians do not make the distinction, but patterns of inflection can suggest a difference. Eine kluge neue Idee. A clever new idea. Eine klug ausgereifte Idee. A cleverly developed idea. A German word like klug cleverly takes endings when used as an attributive adjective but not when used adverbially. Whether these are distinct parts of speech or distinct usages of the same part of speech is a question of analysis. While German linguistic terminology distinguishes adverbial from adjectivish formen, German refers to both as Eigenschaftswörter or property words. Determiners. Linguists today distinguish determiners from adjectives, considering them to be 2 separate parts of speech or lexical categories. Determiners formerly were considered to be adjectives in some other uses. Determiners function neither as nouns nor pronouns but instead characterize a nominal element within a particular context. They generally did this by indicating definiteness, a versus a quantity, one versus some versus many, or another such property. Adjective phrases. An adjective acts as the head of an adjective phrase or adjectival phrase, AP. In the simplest case, an adjective phrase consists solely of the adjective. More complex adjective phrases may contain one or more adverbs modifying the adjective very strong, or one or more complements such as worth several dollars, full of toys, or eager to please. In English, attributive adjective phrases that include complements typically follow the noun that they qualify, an evildoer devoid of redeeming qualities. Other modifiers of nouns. In many languages, including English, it is possible for nouns to modify other nouns. Unlike adjectives, nouns acting as modifiers called attributive nouns are noun adjuncts, usually are not predicative. A beautiful park is beautiful, but a car park is not, car. The modifier often indicates origin, Virginia real, purpose work clothes, semantic patient man eater, or semantic subject child actor. However, it may generally indicate almost any semantic relationship. It is also common for adjectives to be derived from nouns, as in boyish, bird-like, behavioral, famous, manly, angelic, and so on. In Australian Aboriginal languages, the distinction between adjectives and nouns is typically thought weak, and many of the languages only use nouns, or nouns with a limited set of adjective-deriving affixes, to modify other nouns. In languages that have a subtle adjective-noun distinction, one way to tell them apart is that a modifying adjective can come to stand in for an entire elided noun phrase, while a modifying noun cannot. For example, in Bardi, the adjective morulu little, in the phrase morulu bawa little child, can stand on its own to mean the little one, while the attributive noun amba man, in the phrase amba bawa male child, cannot stand for the whole phrase to mean the male one. 7. In other languages, like Warlpiri, nouns and adjectives are lumped together beneath the nominal umbrella because of their shared syntactic distribution as arguments of predicates. The only thing distinguishing them is that some nominals seem to semantically denote entities, typically nouns in English, and some nominals seem to denote attributes, typically adjectives in English. 8. Many languages have participle forms that can act as noun modifiers either alone or as the head of a phrase. Sometimes participles develop into functional usage as adjectives. Examples in English include relieved, the past participle of relieve, used as an adjective in passive voice constructs such as, I am so relieved to see you. Other examples include spoken, the past participle of speak, and going, the present participle of go, which function as attribute adjectives in such phrases as, the spoken word, and, the going rate. Other constructs that often modify nouns include prepositional phrases, as in, a rebel without a cause, relative clauses, as in, the man who wasn't there, and infinitive phrases, as in, a cake to die for. Some nouns can also take complements such as content clauses, as in, the idea that I would do that, but these are not commonly considered modifiers. For more information about possible modifiers and dependents of nouns, see components of noun phrases. Order. In many languages, attributive adjectives usually occur in a specific order. In general, the adjective order in English can be summarized as opinion, size, age or shape, color, origin, material, purpose. 9, 10, 11. Other language authorities, like the Cambridge Dictionary, state that shape precedes rather than follows age. 9, 12, 13. Determiners and post-determiners, articles, numerals, and other limiters, e.g. three blind mice, come before attributive adjectives in English. Although certain combinations of determiners can appear before a noun, they are far more circumscribed than adjectives in their use. Typically, only a single determiner would appear before a noun or noun phrase, including any attributive adjectives. 1. Opinion, limiter adjectives, e.g. a real hero, a perfect idiot, and adjectives of subjective measure, e.g. beautiful, supportive, or value, e.g. good, bad, costly. 2. Size, adjectives denoting physical size, e.g. tiny, big, extensive. 3. Shape or physical quality, adjectives describing more detailed physical attributes than overall size, e.g. round, sharp, turgid, thin. 4. Age, adjectives denoting age, e.g. young, old, new, ancient, 6-year-old. 5. Color, adjectives denoting color or pattern, e.g. white, black, pale, splotchy. 6. Origin, denominal adjectives denoting source, e.g. Japanese, volcanic, extraterrestrial. 7. Material, denominal adjectives denoting what something is made of, e.g. plastic, metallic, wooden. 8. Qualifier, purpose, final limiter, which sometimes forms part of the compound noun, e.g. high chair, northern cabin, passenger car, book cover. This means that, in English, adjectives pertaining to size precede adjectives pertaining to age, little old, not, old little, which in turn generally precede adjectives pertaining to color, old white, not, white old. So, one would say, 1 quantity nice, opinion little, size old, age round, shape, or round old white color brick material house. When several adjectives of the same type are used together, they are ordered from general to specific, like, lovely intelligent person, or, old medieval castle. 9. This order may be more rigid in some languages than others. In some, like Spanish, it may only be a default unmarked word order, with other orders being permissible. Other languages, such as Tagalog, follow their adjectival orders as rigidly as English. The normal adjectival order of English may be overridden in certain circumstances, especially when one adjective is being fronted. For example, the usual order of adjectives in English would result in the phrase, the bad big wolf, opinion before size, but instead, the usual phrase is, the big bad wolf. Owing partially to borrowings from French, English has some adjectives that follow the noun as postmodifiers, called postpositive adjectives, as in time immemorial and attorney general. Adjectives may even change meaning depending on whether they precede or follow, as in proper, they live in a proper town, a real town, not a village versus they live in the town proper, in the town itself, not in the suburbs. All adjectives can follow objects or subjects in elliptical constructions, such as, tell me something that is new, or, we ate the pizza that was cold. Comparison, degrees. In any languages, some adjectives are comparable and the measure of comparison is called degree. For example, a person may be polite, but another person may be more polite, and a third person may be the most polite of the three. The word more here modifies the adjective polite to indicate a comparison is being made, and most modifies the adjective to indicate an absolute comparison, a superlative. Among languages that allow adjectives to be compared, different means are used to indicate comparison. Some languages do not distinguish between comparative and superlative forms. Other languages allow adjectives to be compared but do not have a special comparative form of the adjective. In such cases, as in some Australian Aboriginal languages, case marking, such as the ablative case, may be used to indicate one entity has more of an adjectival quality than, i.e. from, hence abl, another. 7. In English, many adjectives can be inflected to comparative and superlative forms by taking the Suffixes, and, est, sometimes requiring additional letters before the suffix, see forms for far below respectively. Great, greater, greatest. Deep, deeper, deepest. Some adjectives are irregular in this sense. Good, better, best. Bad, worse, worst. Many, more, most, sometimes regarded as an adverb or determiner, little, less, least. Some adjectives can have both regular and irregular variations, old, older, oldest. Far, farther, farthest. Also. Old, elder, eldest. Far, further, furthest. Another way to convey comparison is by incorporating the words more and most. There is no simple rule to decide which means is correct for any given adjective, however. The general tendency is for simpler adjectives and those from Anglo-Saxon to take the suffixes, while longer adjectives and those from French, Latin, or Greek do not, but sometimes the sound of the word is the deciding factor. Many adjectives do not naturally lend themselves to comparison. For example, some English speakers would argue that it does not make sense to say that one thing is more ultimate than another, or that something is most ultimate, since the word ultimate is already absolute in its semantics. Such adjectives are called non-comparable or absolute. Nevertheless, native speakers will frequently play with the raised forms of adjectives of this sort. Although pregnant is logically non-comparable, either one is pregnant or not, one may hear a sentence like, she looks more and more pregnant each day. Comparative and superlative forms are also occasionally used for other purposes than comparison. In English, comparatives can be used to suggest that a statement is only tentative or tendential. One might say, John is more the shy and retiring type, where the comparative, more, is not really comparing him with other people or with other impressions of him, but rather, could be substituting for, on the whole, or, more so than not. In Italian, superlatives are frequently used to put strong emphasis on an adjective. Bellissimo means, most beautiful, but is in fact more commonly heard in the sense, extremely beautiful. Restrictiveness. Attributive adjectives and other noun modifiers may be used either restrictively, helping to identify the noun's referent, hence, restricting its reference, or non-restrictively, helping to describe a noun. For example, he was a lazy sort, who would avoid a difficult task and fill his working hours with easy ones. Here, difficult is restrictive, it tells which tasks he avoids, distinguishing these from the easy ones, only those tasks that are difficult. She had the job of sorting out the mess left by her predecessor, and she performed this difficult task with great acumen. Here difficult is non-restrictive, it is already known which task it was, but the adjective describes it more fully, the aforementioned task, which by the way, is difficult. In some languages, such as Spanish, restrictiveness is consistently marked. For example, in Spanish la tarea difícil means, the difficult task, in the sense of, the task that is difficult, restrictive, whereas la difícil tarea means, the difficult task, in the sense of, the task, which is difficult, non-restrictive. In English, restrictiveness is not marked on adjectives but is marked on relative clauses, the difference between, the man who recognized me was there, and, the man who recognized me was there, being one of restrictiveness. Agreement. In some languages, adjectives alter their form to reflect the gender, case and number of the noun that they describe. This is called agreement or concord. Usually it takes the form of inflections at the end of the word, as in Latin. Puella bona, good girl, feminine singular nominative, quellum bonum, good girl, feminine singular accusative, object case, puer bonus, good boy, masculine singular nominative, pueri boni, good boys, masculine plural nominative. In Celtic languages, however, initial consonant lenition marks the adjective with a feminine singular noun, as in Irish. Boachael maith, good boy, masculine persich emhaith, good girl, feminine. Here, a distinction may be made between attributive and predicative usage. In English, adjectives never agree, whereas in French, they always agree. In German, they agree only when they are used attributively, and in Hungarian, they agree only when they are used predicatively. The good, boys. The boys are good, Les bons garçons. Les garçons sont bons. Die braven Jungen. Die Jungen sind brav, A Joe, fuke. A fuke jock. Semantics. Semantics. Barbara Party classifies adjectives semantically as intersective, subsective, or non-subsective, with non-subsective adjectives being plain non-subsective or privative. 14. An adjective is intersective if and only if the extension of its combination with a noun is equal to the intersection of its extension and that of the noun it's modifying. For example, the adjective carnivorous is intersective, given the extension of carnivorous mammal is the intersection of the extensions of carnivorous and mammal, i.e., the set of all mammals who are carnivorous. An adjective is subsective if and only if the extension of its combination with a noun is a subset of the extension of the noun. For example, the extension of skillful surgeon is a subset of the extension of surgeon, but it is not the intersection of that and the extension of skillful, as that would include, for example, incompetent surgeons who are skilled violinists. All intersective adjectives are subsective, but the term subsective is sometimes used to refer to only those subsective adjectives which are not intersective. Adjective is privative if and only if the extension of its combination with a noun is disjoint from the extension of the noun. For example, fake is privative because a fake cat is not a cat. A plain non-subsective adjective is an adjective that is not subsective or privative. For example, the word possible is this kind of adjective, as the extension of possible murderer overlaps with, but is not included in the extension of murderer, as some, but not all, possible murderers are murderers. English prepositions. With. What. Case, xal. Shall. Either. Comparative. Degree. bb. Construed. With. Because. Of. His, degree. With. An. Ablative. Case. Of. Either. Noun brain number. Without. A. Preposition. English prepositions are words, such as of, in, on, at, from, etc. that function as the head of a prepositional phrase, and most characteristically license a noun phrase object, e.g., in the water. 1. Semantically, they most typically denote relations in space and time. 2. Morphologically, they are usually simple and do not inflect. 1. They form a closed lexical category. 3-4 Many of the most common of these are grammaticalized and correspond to case markings in languages such as Latin. 548 for example, of typically corresponds to the genitive. The history of the idea of prepositions in English grammar writing can be seen as one of relative stagnation, only exceptionally interrupted by certain more influential authors. It was only in the second half of the 20th century that the situation radically changed, and since then, grammarians have introduced scientifically precise definitions and developed detailed and elaborate frameworks for their description. 6. The word preposition is from Latin praepositionum, nominative praepositio, of putting before, of prefixing, noun of action from past participle stem of praeponere put before. 7th The basic idea being that it is a word that comes before a noun. Its first known use in English is by John Drury, writing in Middle English on Latin grammar c. 1434. 870-83. What case should the comparative degree be construed with because of its degree? With an ablative case of either number without a preposition. History of the concept in English. The meaning was essentially the same as the general idea today, a simple word preceding a noun expressing a relation between it and another word. 9. William Bullockar wrote the earliest grammar of English, published in 1586. It includes a chapter on prepositions. His definition follows. A partitive used positively is governing an accusative case set next after it, except sometime in verse it is set after his casual word, as, I go to the church, and is sometime postpositively used, that is, when it governeth the relative, that, or which, coming before a verb, whose governing preposition is set after such verb, as, this is the man whom we spoke of, or of whom we spoke, and is sometime used in composition after a verb, but being severed from the verb by the adverb. Not, or by an accusative case, may be said to be said in apposition adverbially. 10 page 320, orthography has been modernized. Some grammarians, though, noted problems. In 1746, John Kirkby complains, we have several instances of the same word being used at one time as a conjunction and at another time as a preposition. 11 and in 1784, John Hunter argued in more detail, in a paper presented to the Royal Society of Edinburgh in its first year, that neither conjunctions nor adverbs were in all cases usefully distinguished from prepositions in English or in Latin and Greek. He stressed that classifications were being based on the merely accidental differences in what constituent, if any, happened to follow the word. The rational analysis is to treat after as simply a preposition governing, optionally, a complement that can be either a noun phrase or a clause. 1225-38. In 1924, Otto Jespersen developed these ideas, pointing out that prepositions were the only lexical category defined by the type of complement. 13. In other words, prepositions were defined as words that take a noun phrase, NP complement. Verbs, though, take various complements, including object, goal complement, predicative complement, and no complement at all, in the case of an intransitive verb. Similarly, an adjective phrase may consist of an adjective alone or with a complement, e.g., I'm happy to be here. Jespersen also noted that many words, such as before and I came before, which were categorized as adverbs, were very similar in meaning and syntax to prepositions, e.g., I came before you. And the same held for many words categorized as subordinating conjunctions, e.g., I came before you did. He therefore proposed that all these words are prepositions, and that the requirement that they be followed by a noun phrase be dropped. This is the position taken in many modern grammars, such as the Cambridge Grammar of the English Language. 14,597. On the other hand, dictionaries and ESL grammars have not adopted these ideas. For example, Merriam-Webster's dictionary has before as an adverb, preposition, and conjunction. 15. Preposition versus other lexical categories. Prepositions versus verbs. Both prepositions and verbs license NP objects, but in most cases, the distinction is clear because verbs conjugate, and prepositions do not. There, however, a number of prepositions derive from participial verb forms, e.g., come or barring, which could be confused with verbs. 135 Modification by really is typically possible with a VP, e.g., spring has really come but not with a PP, e.g., the flowers will bloom really come spring, And transitive prepositions versus adverbs. One of the results of the reconceptualization of prepositions by Jespersen and others, see section History of the Concept in English, is confusion between intransitive prepositions and adverbs. Many adverbs end in -ly, which clearly distinguishes them from prepositions, but many do not. One simple test that is often telling is to modify the phrase by right or just. In standard English, adverb phrases do not accept such modification, e.g., it ran right up the tree, PP, it ran right vertically, add VP. Also, PPs commonly function as complements in a BVP, e.g., it is in the car, while adverbs cannot normally do so. 16-131. Prepositions versus complementizers. Complementizer is a term which has its origins in generative grammar. It refers to a restricted subset of what are classified as subordinating conjunctions in traditional grammar. There are only a very few complementizers, that, whether, and if are the main examples. 1. Traditional grammar includes words like because, while, and unless in the class of subordinating conjunctions. Since at least Jespersen, see section History of the Concept in English, most modern grammarians distinguish these two categories based on whether they add meaning to the sentence or are purely functional. The distinction can be shown with if, since there is a complementizer if and a preposition if. 16-129 The preposition introduces a conditional meaning, e.g., if it works, that's great. Complementizers, though, have no meaning. They just mark a clause as subordinate. There is no difference in meaning between I know that you were there and I know you were there. In she asked if we were there, the complementizer if merely marks the following clause as a closed interrogative content clause, without adding any conditional meaning. The syntax of prepositions and PPs. Internal structure. PPs are usually quite simple in their internal structure. The following syntax tree shows a PP with an adverb phrase as modifier and a head PP. The head PP has a head preposition in and an object NP. The reign. 14-635. The preposition governs an argument of a larger phrase, such as a noun phrase. The object of the preposition is sometimes called a prepositional or oblique argument. For 216, for example, convert the energy of ocean waves into electricity becomes the conversion of the energy of ocean waves into electricity, where the underlined NP, which is the object in the PP headed by of, is the oblique argument of conversion. Postpositions. A very small number of prepositions, see list of English prepositions section. Postpositions may occur after their object, for example, notwithstanding, which can appear either before the object, e.g., notwithstanding the fact, or after, e.g., the contrary notwithstanding. 14-602. Complements of prepositions. Traditional grammars of English characterize prepositions as words that take objects in the form of noun phrases. The prototypical prepositional phrase consists of a noun phrase complement following a preposition. Prepositions can take a wider variety of complements than just noun phrases. 14. 3 to 606 English prepositions can also take clauses, adjective phrases, adverb phrases, and other prepositional phrases as complements, though they occur less frequently than noun phrase complements. 17. 153 to 158. Noun phrase complements. Prepositions typically take noun phrases as complements. 74 to 80 For example, the prepositional phrase on the table consists of the head on and the complement the table, and the prepositional phrase in the area consists of the head in and the complement the area. By analogy with noun phrase complements of verbs, noun phrase complements of prepositions are occasionally called objects in grammars of English. 18. 191 to 200. Like objects of verbs, objects of preposition typically carry accusative case. 17. 9 to 30 14. 458 to 462 Thus, we expect to see prepositional phrases like near me and at her rather than near I and at she because me and her are accusative case pronouns while I and she are nominative case pronouns. Indeed, some grammars treat the inability of prepositions to have nominative case pronouns as a defining characteristic of prepositions. 19. 658 to 659 An exception to this rule about case seems to occur when the preposition takes a coordinated pair of objects, such as someone and I. In these cases, usage varies, and the pronoun can carry either nominative or accusative case. For example, users of English might say, between you and I, or, between you and me. Commentators of Homer, illiterate, and assign that the English language is deteriorating. According to Merriam-Webster's Dictionary of English Usage, nominative case pronouns as part of a coordinated pair of prepositional objects have occurred in respected works of literature and are actually more characteristic of educated varieties of English than of less educated varieties. 20. In some cases, the object NP in the PP is atypical in that it lacks a determiner. 14. 409 For example, I'm at school is grammatical, even though an NP headed by the singular noun school usually requires a determiner. They're building new school is not grammatical because it is lacking a determiner. Other examples are in hospital bed. Typically the meaning here implies a purpose. For example, going to the bed does not suggest sleeping in the way that going to bed does. Clause complements. Prepositions that take a clause as a complement are called conjunctive prepositions or subordinating prepositions. 17. 74 to 80 18. 191 to 200 Conjunctive prepositions can take a variety of kinds of clauses as complements. Most often, they take finite clauses as complements. 17. 153 to 158 These finite clause complements can be declarative, this happened after Stacy left, or interrogative, they ignored the question of whether it was ethical. They can also be subjunctive clauses, lest there be any doubt. 14. 635 to 643. Less commonly, conjunctive prepositions take non-finite clauses as complements. Non-finite clause complements include infinitive clauses, we can't agree on how much to charge, and present participle clauses, you can't just put it on without them knowing. These clauses may occur with or without subjects, and subjects that do occur can be an accusative case without them knowing or genitive case without their knowing. 17. 153 to 158 Though various usage commentators have called both cases incorrect in such clauses, many writers use both constructions, and the choice of case often depends on the context. For example, the accusative case is more likely when the subject is emphasized, a phrase intervenes between the subject and the verb, or the subject is plural. 21. Other complements of prepositions. In more limited cases, prepositions can take other kinds of complements. The prepositionist can take an adjective phrase complement to form a prepositional phrase that functions as an object complement, you describe them as jealous. 7. 153 to 158 Prepositions also take adjective phrase complements in certain fixed phrases, such as at last and in brief. 19. 657 to 658. As adjective phrase complements, prepositions can take adverb phrase complements in fixed phrases, such as by far and since when. 19. 658 Further, certain prepositions namely, before, ere, for, until can take temporal adverbs such as later, long, one, and recently as complements, forming prepositional phrases such as for later, until recently, for once, and before long. 14. 635 to 643. Prepositions can also take prepositional phrases as complements. These prepositional phrase complements can be specified by the preposition or not. In the prepositional phrase apart from Jill, for example, the preposition apart requires that the complement include the preposition from. In the prepositional phrase since before the war, however, the preposition since does not require the preposition before and could have instead been something else, such as since after the war. 14. 635 to 643. Modifiers of prepositions. Prepositions may optionally be modified by other phrasal categories. Adverbs, noun phrases, and prepositional phrases can function as pre-head modifiers of prepositions, that is, modify prepositions that follow them, and prepositional phrases can also function as post-head modifiers, that is, modify prepositions that precede them. Pre-head modifiers. Adverb phrases can function as pre-head modifiers in prepositional phrases. For example, the prepositional phrase after midnight can be modified by adverb phrases such as shortly, shortly after midnight, or quite obviously after midnight. 643 to 645 A subset of adverb phrase modifiers of prepositions express degree and occur within prepositional phrases but not other phrasal categories. These degree adverbs include clear, flat, plumb, right, smack, and straight. Examples of prepositional phrases modified in this way include clear up the tree, straight out the door, and right out of the park. 14. 643 to 645 18. 191 to 200. Phrases indicating spatial or temporal extent can occur before a preposition that expresses spatial or temporal meaning in order to modify it. Example, the prepositional phrase beyond the post office can be modified by the noun phrase 2 miles beyond the post office, or a few minutes walk beyond the post office. 158 to 160 14. 643 to 645 Certain prepositions with directional meanings can function as pre-head modifiers in prepositional phrases. 17. 158 to 160 The prepositions down, out, over, and up frequently occur in this role. 14. 643 to 645 For example, the preposition down can modify the prepositional phrases by the beach, down by the beach, and by the sea, down by the sea. 158 to 160 we can tell that these directional prepositions are modifying other proportional phrases rather than taking prepositional phrases as complements because the other preposition determines whether the whole phrase is grammatical. Thus, placed it up on the shelf is grammatical because I placed it on the shelf is also grammatical, but I placed it up to the attic is not grammatical because I placed it to the attic is not grammatical. 14, 643 to 645. Post-head modifiers. Prepositional phrases can also modify prepositions that precede them. In the clause they go out in the cold, for example, the preposition out is modified by the prepositional phrase in the cold. Though it may appear that in the modifying the verb go rather than the preposition out, movement of the elements to different parts of the clause suggests that in the cold is actually linked with the preposition out. The prepositional phrase in the cold cannot move to the start of the clause by itself, asterisk in the cold they go out, but it can move to the start of the clause as part of the larger prepositional phrase out in the cold they go. 17, 158 to 160. Functions. PPs typically function as adjuncts in clauses, verb phrases, NPs, and adjectives. They also function as complements in VPs, PPs, adjectives, and NPs. 14, 646. Particle. Prepositions may function as particles, a kind of dependent in a VP that may, unusually, come between a verb and an object. An example is up in pick up the children or pick the children up. 16, 144. Subject. In rare cases, a PP can function as the subject of a clause, such as the underlined PP in the following conversation. A. What time can we meet? B. Before noon doesn't work. Types of prepositions. Subcategorization. 6. Subcategorization is a assignment of a lexical item to a subclass of its part of speech, especially with respect to the syntactic elements with which it can combine. 3. Prepositions can be subcategorized based on complement type. 22, 158 The list of English prepositions is categorized this way. Though the prototypical preposition is a single word that precedes a noun phrase complement and expresses spatial relations, the category of preposition includes more than this limited notion. See English prepositions section history of the concept in English. Prepositions can be categorized according to whether the preposition takes a complement, what kind of complement the preposition takes, on what side of the preposition the complement occurs, and whether the preposition consists of one word or multiple words. A preposition that takes a noun phrase complement is called a transitive preposition, e.g., she went up the hill, and one that does not take any complements is called an intransitive preposition, e.g., she went up. 3. Prepositions can also take the following complements, clauses e.g., after you arrived, adjective phrases e.g., accepted as valid, and other prepositional phrases e.g., because of the problem. A preposition whose complement precedes it e.g., the Constitution notwithstanding may be called a postposition to distinguish it from more prototypical prepositions, whose complements follow them. 3. Some grammars classify prepositions and postpositions as different kinds of adpositions while other grammars categorize both under the heading of the more common variety in the language. Thus, in the latter categorization method, postpositions may be considered a variety of preposition in English. Complex prepositions. A complex preposition is a multi-word preposition. 1. The Cambridge Grammar of the English Language, CGEL, says of complex prepositions. In the first place, there is a good deal of inconsistency in the traditional account, as reflected in the practice of dictionaries, as to which combinations are analyzed as complex prepositions and which as sequences of adverb plus preposition.